In this short video, I would like to explore depression with a particular focus on bipolar depression and discuss actions we might take for ourselves beyond medication, regardless of any genetic or chemical predisposition to depression that we may experience. Perhaps a more common sense way of stating this might be, what can I do for myself beyond medication to retrain my brain's thoughts and my body's emotions towards better responses that I might consciously desire to have rather than what my subconscious mind and body currently give me. I do wish to emphasize this information is based on my personal experience and is not intended to provide medical or psychological advice, just some common sense new perspectives. This information is for potentially high-functioning individuals who experience periods of emotional exhaustion. They get depression and they get stuck in debilitating negative thought patterns despite knowing that they are capable and intelligent, and who are open-minded and prepared to try new techniques to test if they work rather than shooting down new ideas without even trying. I've discovered that although challenging, it is possible influence your brain to think differently, your body to release more agreeable chemicals, and for it to become far more energized. It's clear to me that our bodies function like a complex chemistry set, and because we have the ability to learn how to influence it more effectively, it would be unwise not to do so. And what mainly stops us from making substantial changes to our lives are usually self-limiting beliefs, fear, and low self-esteem, all of which are learned traits from our childhood domestication and can be unlearned to some positive degree. So if you're interested, I'd like to simplistically share my theories about depression and bipolar depression based on my recovery from both. The condition we call depression develops after prolonged periods of stress, illness, frustration, excessive worry, working too hard, poor sleep, putting up with things that you don't agree with, loss, grief, boredom, or not living the life that you might desire to live. And bipolar depression, which is a subset of depression seen in some personalities, this is characterized by extreme shifts in mood, energy, and activity levels, swinging from intense lows right through to manic highs. And in my work over the last 2 decades, I've observed a potential correlation between bipolar depression and individuals whose creative, extroverted, and nonconformist tendencies seem to be suppressed in childhood and who currently lack an appropriate creative outlet for their powerful imaginations and their uniqueness of character. These days, during childhood, we might have labeled these individuals as having ADHD or ADD, but years ago they might have been labeled as extroverted, disruptive, or challenging. I believe that many adults who were like this as children were forced to suppress their spontaneous reactions and their unique independence in order to fit in and avoid being reprimanded. Therefore, they may have an inner conflict between who they feel they should be and who they think they should be. And this can cause a lot of confusion, doubt, and emotional exhaustion. Another way of metaphorically looking at this is to imagine that we humans have a 6-month buffer of emotional energy, like an emotional energy battery inside of us, providing us with enough energy and enough resilience to respond to and to get through life's transient challenges as they arise. Then as we resolve those challenges or remove ourselves from those people's jobs or environmental conditions that caused us excessive worry and discomfort, that emotional battery slowly recharges, ready for our next set of life experiences and challenges. I often ask my clients, what happened to you in the 6 to 8 months before your depression started? And usually they can give me an emotionally draining life event that preceded their depression, even if it was 10 years ago. So perhaps depression is our natural biological state when we become exhausted and are not engaging with life in ways that suit our true personality and allow for our basic animal needs of love, connection, meaning, security, and creativity to largely be met. Very few people who are living in these ways have depression except if they are working too hard and therefore exhausting themselves biologically. Can you see that when depression is observed from a more nature-based biological and animal perspective, it makes some sense? In more confident individuals, if their work, relationships, or living environment are making them unhappy and exhausted, thus beginning to affect their emotional wellness, they usually quickly act and take responsibility for changing those conditions into more favorable outcomes, which lessens stress and thus allows them to emotionally recharge back to wellness. However, other individuals who were raised to prioritize being kind, avoid letting other people down, and to not put their own needs first, they might find making career changes, leaving unhealthy relationships, or asserting themselves to pursue their desires quite challenging. Thus, they may need to put up with this discomfort, which further distresses their inner chemistry and develops even more emotional exhaustion and moves them into developing negative thinking loops. And although not covered in this video, it's important to understand that prolonged periods of depression cause our cells to develop more receptors for stress chemicals and have fewer ones for happy chemicals, thus skewing our ability to feel nice emotions even when good things happen. Once this is understood, it's important to recognize that it takes 4 to 6 months to reverse this cellular configuration using epigenetic techniques and the adoption of more positive and optimistic belief systems to trick our body into releasing happy rather than fearful chemicals. This is discussed in video 7 of my course and is one of the most effective ways to reverse depression. Now, if we jump back to emotional exhaustion, when our emotional battery becomes flat, or if we are unable to resolve, escape, or accept what caused our emotional agitation in the first place, the subconscious part of our brain may be forced to sabotage the more intelligent thinking aspect of our brain away from its logical and reasoning type thinking and into an unconscious, automated, and simplistic life preservation safety mode. This subconscious closing down and retreating from life may unconsciously sabotage our work, relationships, our mental health, or whatever story will scare our conscious mind into causing us to doubt and immobilize ourselves to conserve energy. Of course, all your unconscious brain and body want for you is to stop worrying, fix your life, and recharge your batteries. But this message is often consciously misconstrued as what's wrong with me. This natural conservation of energy can be noticed when the depressed person experiences a good event. The body doesn't give them the expected nice emotional sensations. It's the same when things don't go well. You might say that good experiences don't feel good and bad ones don't feel bad either. And we might call this numb, apathetic, indecisive, and emotionally exhausted state depression. Now, for the group of humans which we might call normal, assuming they possess effective life skills, if they can rectify the consequences that cause them to emotionally deteriorate into this animal safety mode, they will slowly come back online over a 4 to 6 month period. At this point, their emotions begin to function normally again. Good things begin to feel good again, so they do more of them. Bad things start to feel bad, so they either change the bad things, accept them, or move away from them. And the truth is that we humans are emotional beings who have learned to think. However, depression causes us to become thinking beings attempting to control our emotions. And this is backwards, and it leaves us feeling indecisive. Any good salesperson will tell you that humans make decisions with their emotions, and then they justify with their logic and reason. But this only works if your emotional battery is charged. Now, for the group of more repressed, extroverted characters that I'm alluding to with a set of symptoms the medical world might label as bipolar depression, this underlying battery pattern still plays out, though it manifests in a slightly different manner. These more creative, extroverted, and spontaneous individuals are that way because their brains and bodies respond very immediately to external stimuli or their internal creative imagination. You might say that they are biologically and emotionally very responsive. And often alcohol, medication, or recreational drugs affect them much more than in a normal person. And because of this, their sensitivity to hangovers or come downs is often more considerable too. Also, due to their very creative imaginations, they are able to catastrophize or even excite themselves to the nth degree, thus exhausting themselves even further and slowing down their recovery back to emotional health. But here's the point I need you to understand. Whereas in normal people it takes 4 to 6 months to recharge and emotionally come back online, in those more extroverted, imaginative and sensitive individuals, their biology begins to respond to this energetic recharge after just a few weeks. They come online again and swing from a depressed state to a more positive one and immediately respond to this new energetic state by diving straight back into life, going out, socializing and taking action. And this quickly uses up what little energy they have in store, thus flipping them back into a depressive state and thus yo-yoing between the bipolar states of depression and expression. And once the person can acknowledge that this is what's happening, they must recognize that they too need 4 to 6 months to recharge their emotional battery. Even though they feel better quite quickly, they should try to moderate their use of energy during this phase. And if they do use up this energy quickly, it seems to me that their unconscious brain tries to sabotage them, to pull them back from life by introducing manic, pure OCD type scary thoughts and ruminations, which is just an expression of their rich imagination. Finally, this group with bipolar depression very often know what they need to do with their lives, but fail to take action, even when they're not feeling depressed. I think this behavior is more aligned with their ADD brain configuration, so they will need strategies put in place to make them more accountable to what they want from life. So if this information resonates with you, it would be my advice that for the first group with depression, you work on self-esteem, defining your intentions for your life, addressing the things that need to be changed in your life, recharging your battery by learning how to worry less, and epigenetically restructuring your inner chemistry and your cell configurations. And in the second group with bipolar depression, it would be my advice to recharge more slowly. So as you feel a little better, you conserve that energy and use it wisely to get your life in order, to tidy up your life, and to orientate your intention into more creative endeavors rather than wasting it socializing, playing computer games, or distracting yourself with hedonistic pleasures. Of course, both parties will need to reprogram themselves from the starting point of despair, exhaustion, and fear. However, if not now, then when? There is much we can do to affect our emotional states. However, they all begin by recharging our emotional batteries for 4 to 6 months, and then everything begins to change. It's just how biology operates, but sadly we're not told this, and the world we are forced to live in is not the one that we were biologically designed for, so we need common sense strategies to compensate for this. If you'd like to learn how I ended my anxiety and my depression, my Calmness in Mind course takes you step by step through the process. Perhaps you'd like to take a look. Thank you very much.